everyone. Welcome to another episode of Crypto Current. Your host here, Richard Carthon. And today I have a special guest all the way out in New Zealand in that beautiful weather that I'm highly jealous of at the moment. And he is going to be speaking to us about a really, really cool project that is very near and dear to me from the traditional standpoint. If you know anything about index funds, he has found a way to bring this to the crypto world. So I know I'm pumped about this. I hope you are too. We have one of the people on the core team. We have Alex. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, man. Thanks very much. That intro makes me sound like some kind of superhero.
Well, I guess we're going to find out depending on how ExpX goes, right? So we're here to learn about ExpX. Really excited to learn about crypto index funds. Before we do that, I want to learn more about you. Can you give us some background on yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Alex, as you said. I'm based down here in beautiful New Zealand, Auckland. My background is I've got 20 years in IT, coming from a technical background. So I used to work a lot on complex customer-facing stuff. Like I used to work on airline online booking engines, and all the kind of logic and architecture behind that, and also cybersecurity. So I spent a couple of years on a red team, getting paid to hack people's mainframes and show them the error of their ways. And
wow.
obviously it's all, that transitions me nicely to crypto these days, because if I can't break it, then, probably not many people can.
Yeah, no, that's well positioned. And I know security is going to be important. We'll get a little bit more into that later. But what was that first introduction into crypto? Like, how did you, going from that kind of background, how did you first learn about crypto and how did you decide to get it involved?
So some of my friends, quite a few of whom are actually with me on this ExpX wild ride. They actually got me into it initially a few years ago. It actually took me a while. Like I was not an early believer, if you know what I mean. It actually took quite a few people to kind of sit me down and talk through it a few times. And these guys have been heavily into crypto for all the way since like 2010. Wow. But once I finally got it a few years ago, it was like a click, like it's one of those things, like once you get it, you just go, wow, man, like I can't believe that people are kind of not aware of this. This is going to be world changing. And so From that moment on, I started getting into it, coming from a technical background, obviously, I managed to get my head around a few of the concepts there, and we've got some guys on the team that are much smarter than I am. And here we are. So these days, I'm a believer.
Yeah. Well, you picked the red pill. You decided to see how far the rabbit hole goes, and here we are. So
I don't think any of us know quite how deep the rabbit hole is going to go, but it's gonna be quite a way.
It is, man. And so you learn about this, and now you're being introduced, and you're like, okay, how do I create a company? So like, tell me about the origin story of ExpX, right? So how did you go from cybersecurity hacking people to I want to create an index fund for crypto?
So the guys that are with me on the core team, we've got a really distributed range of backgrounds, right? So our team is kind of split nicely down the middle between guys that come from a traditional business space. So they're IT entrepreneurs and corporate people, arguably myself included, because I used to come from that sphere as well. And then the other half of the team are like crypto fanatics, like guys that are like fully into like smart contracts experts, and guys that are just, like blockchain fanatics. And so just in talking with these guys, everybody obviously had their own kind of view on what's possible. These guys were all involved before ExpX. These guys were all involved in other projects as well. And so finally we were like, listen, why don't we just make our own thing? Like we know what we're doing. Right? And so, of course. And so, I really looked at what's that perfect intersection, between something that's new and something that doesn't exist yet in crypto, something that's an important like tool, but also something that I felt would be quite understandable, something that would be of benefit not just to people in the space already, but also to newcomers, to maybe more traditional players that are kind of hedging their bets. And that's where this idea came from, man. Because crypto, index funds are such a basic tool of traditional finance, ever since they first came in the 70s. It's arguably the default method of investment. People who don't spend all their time playing the stock market and learning individual stocks and all that, if they got investment money that they want to bring in, they put it into an index fund, and it works for them. So they'll bring it in, leave it there for years, and it works because the system works. So it just seemed mad to me that in crypto there was no such thing. Crypto inherently is so much more volatile than traditional finance, right? And yet there just seemed to be no way to actually get in without meaningfully mitigating that risk, unless you're willing to spend really a very serious amount of time learning the market, tracking individual tokens. And of course, individual coins can crash in an hour, right? So it just seemed crazy that this very basic tool wasn't there. And so we decided to build it. And then we discovered why it wasn't there, because it turns out that it's not so easy.
Yeah. Let's unpack that, because like you said, most people who come into the crypto space, come into the finance space when they have their 401k set up and et cetera, most of them get into index funds. It's the safe, sure bet to get your hopeful 5 to 8% year over year and, ride into the sunset. Now, in crypto, like you said, is extremely volatile, even for your blue chips, your top 10s, et cetera. And to try to create a fund that helps to index and to protect downside automatically is not a small feat at all. So like, how are y'all able to put some things in place so that anybody can be able to come in and create their first index fund, if you will?
Well, it took a while. So we've been working on this project, developing it for well over a year now, and that's with entirely our own dev team as well. So we actually maintain and pay for our own developers. We don't outsource development. So there were a lot of technical challenges along the way. I don't want to bore your listeners by getting into the nitty-gritty of things, but there's a huge amount of complexity associated with managing things like slippage between transactions, managing with things like making sure that an index fund is composed of coins or tokens that have some kind of shared context, if you know what I mean. Like in the traditional space, an index fund usually has some kind of meaning behind it. It's not just a random collection of stocks, right? There's some, you're either investing in forestry or, automotive or whatever it is. So within crypto, we wanted to do something like that as well, that there's some kind of meaningful context to what you're getting into. But it's very difficult because of how volatile all the tokens are. Right. So technically, to be able to technically allow people to come in with a single asset like USDT or something, and in exchange for that, with a single transaction, purchase a pie of all the tokens in the fund, and actually be able to get that equity back at any time without middlemen, right? Because that's the whole point. You don't want to, you don't actually want to give your money to somebody. You want to make sure that money is actually there on the smart contract managing the index fund.
Right.
This turned out to be technically challenging. We really had to create a fair amount of technology from scratch in order to be able to do this. So I'm very proud of the more techie guys on the team that have managed to achieve this, because I know they had some sleepless nights.
Oh, absolutely had to, just to figure this out. So that's on the technical side. That's the foundation, what's behind the curtain, if you will. But on the front end, for someone who's listening to this right now, what would that experience look like? So I come on to ExpX and I want to get into one of the index funds. Walk me through how I would do that.
So right now, obviously we're pre-launch. So, you're not going to see too much there except for the UI that you can start familiarizing yourself with. But once we launch, what you're going to see is literally a list of index funds. Now, these index funds is going to include funds that we've created ourselves. What I mean by that is funds that we've organized ourselves, not funds composed of our own, coins and whatnot. So you'll see all the familiar tokens in there. You'll also see funds created by other people that have been approved by us. Now, when I say approved, all we're doing is we're just checking that there's essentially no scam coins in a fund, right? What we don't want people to do is to create an index fund that's composed of good solid tokens, and then there's one or two bullshit dodgy ones in there. And people come into that not knowing what they're doing. Remember, index funds are supposed to be a tool for a relatively amateur investor. and people lose their money because tokens crash. So all we do is we just make sure that there's no shit coins, basically, and then we approve it to be good to go. And all you'll see is a list of these funds with a buy button. Basically, you hit the buy button, you'll be able to transact. It's a single transaction in USDT or USDT equivalent. And what you'll get back is essentially a stake of the index fund equivalent to the amount of equity that you've brought into it, right? So it's really it's absolutely as close as we could make it to traditional index funds. It's literally you just bring it, you buy into the fund. You get what we call liquidity provided tokens. It's technical. You don't have to go into it. Basically, what it means is that if you want to get your money back, you don't need our approval. You can just literally transfer those LP tokens back onto the fund and get your money back anytime you want. So there's no risk to you. And then you just hold them. You just do whatever you want. If you want to take an active interest, you can obviously play with multiple index funds. The LP tokens themselves are actually stakeable if you want to get into that. Otherwise, just like traditional finance, get into the index fund, leave it for years. Nice and easy.
Yeah, set and forget. So a quick onboarding ramp for your investors, some different types that you can get into, which is, again, if you've worked with any 401ks in the past or looked at these type of options, that's typically how it goes. You have a couple of different even risk profiles within index funds, even though all are supposed to be relatively safer. Some are more risky than others. So you have a couple of options in that capacity.
Yeah, that's actually on our roadmap. So initially, the number of index funds is not going to be too great, but as we go on, we're going to create new ones, and exactly like you said, they're actually going to be risk profile based. Because if you in crypto, everybody's used to to making a lot of money because there's a lot of risk, but that's that's in a way. I don't want to. I'm not trying to get up anybody's nose here, but that's a game. That's not how traditional investment works. So for people that are coming from a more conservative perspective, they want to deal with risk levels, and they're quite prepared to take a lower profit if there's a guarantee of stability there. So yeah, exactly. We'll offer index funds that basically, if you want to go in for a higher risk fund, here it is. If you want to go in for an extremely conservative fund, here it is. You just pick it, enter. That's how it is. We've got a guy on the team that comes from inside, if you like, the world of traditional investment.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember the first time we were discussing his idea, we had to explain it to him 3 times because he was just like, but you're just talking about an index fund. And he just could not believe that you couldn't do this on a concept, cryptocurrency, which is supposed to be all about investment. He just could not believe it. And finally he was like, okay, we'll just create an index fund. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it is Occam's razor. Like sometimes the easiest thing is just like the solution, and y'all stumbled across it. But like you said, it's a difficult thing to overcome, but it sounds like y'all have been able to kind of crack it. And I know I'm excited to see how it comes into fruition. But going back to your security background, one of the huge things with a lot of this is always going to be security. And with having potential third parties that would become improved to go in and create these index funds as well, security is always going to be very important. What are some things that y'all put in place to make sure that everything's staying secure?
Definitely. Well, thanks, man. You're pitching it up for me. All I got to do is hit it, right?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, as you said, man, the whole point of this is to appeal to perhaps a more conservative investor, a person who's coming from a more traditional space. So, the idea that you would literally just transfer all your money to an account is just nonsense. That's not how that works. So one of the most important things about our project is that all funds are retained on the smart contracts. We don't have access to them. Nobody's got access to them. They're literally they're controlled by the smart contract on the blockchain. So the weak point, if you like, is the smart contract itself. So we had to be really very sure that this was going to work, because otherwise we would be disappointing a lot of people. So in order to do that, we went to the trouble and expense of getting our smart contracts fully certified and audited by Certec, who are a world leader in such things. And we worked with them for a little while. They came back with a few things and we fixed them. So it was a bit of a collaboration there. And now we've achieved the point where, we're fully certified. Certec thinks that we're completely legit. There's no way for those funds to leave the smart contracts.
That's a big deal. For people who don't know, that's a big
huge deal. Yeah, it's a huge deal. It was long. It's a long and, if I may say so, expensive process. But we felt we just had to do it specifically because it's such a cornerstone of what we're trying to do. We're really trying to, this is not like a short-term hype project, if you know what I mean. Like, this isn't like an NFT launch or something. The whole point of ExpX is that we're trying to put together a foundational component of a platform for investment in crypto. So this is a long burner, and therefore we had to make sure we've got the foundation right.
Right, and that's awesome. Huge congrats on getting that done. Like you said, it's definitely an investment, and it will set y'all up for the future. And it's good to see that y'all have a long-term view on this. And with something like an index fund, I'd imagine it would be, because when you think about mass adoption into the crypto space, you typically have things that people can bridge that make sense to them that you can then bridge into this newer space, which a lot of people are familiar with index funds. How do you think this is going to help further mass adoption? What are some other things that you think are going on that are going to continue to further mass adoption in this space?
So mass adoption is the very word. What I'm personally most interested in at the moment in crypto is actually bringing in more people into the crypto space, regardless of what project it is, right? I think, well, obviously, because I'm behind it. I believe that we're putting together a very good solution for new entrants into crypto. But if for whatever reason they choose to not go with ExpX, they choose to go with somebody else, I'm fine with that. I kind of want to open people's, sounding very messianical here, I want to open people's eyes as to what crypto really is, because I think the population at large, and especially unexpectedly, but I think players from the traditional finance space who are actually usually quite clued up about these things, they hold crypto still in this kind of disdain. And they think that it's just some imaginary coin that comes from nowhere and goes nowhere, and they don't really understand it. So the most exciting thing to me is actually creating tools, platforms, teaching material, whatever it is, that actually helps to ease people over that kind of critical moment when they get it. And I think that ExpX is a really important stepping stone, because an index fund is something that is immediately recognizable to anybody from traditional finance, no matter what level they're at. It could be a mom and pa investor that's got $2,000 in a fund somewhere. Could be a hedge fund dealing with billions. They both deal with indices in one way or another. And if we can just point them to this thing and say, listen, man, it's, here's something that you're very, very familiar with. Let's just explain, let's explain the differences to you with regards to how it works in the crypto space. They immediately get context. They immediately have an understanding of what this thing is. Whereas previously it was just imaginary ether coins somewhere. Right. So that's very, very key. It's very important to me. It's very important to my team. This is a project that enables participation in crypto by as many people as possible, because the more people come in, the faster it's going to become accepted. And basically that's a win-win situation. We all win from that.
No doubt, man. And I think it's crucial as we continue to move towards mass adoption. Is part of any really awesome product is the onboarding and the initial user experience. For your brand new person who doesn't necessarily know or have never been into crypto, when they're trying to come and get into your index fund, will they have to already have crypto to do it? Or will they be able to come in and add a credit card or wire or put in information? Like, how are they going to be able to onboard into getting into one of these funds?
Yeah, you're pushing me, man. You're pushing me. That's so.
It's fine if you don't want to talk about this. By the way, we can also not talk about this.
Of course, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about everything. So yeah, look, you've hit a really big thing as well. This is absolutely a key barrier to a lot of people. So on our roadmap, we already have plans to build a payment gateway. So we already have a technical partner that we're working with to make that happen. There's still a few things to go in there. Most of them are actually non-technical. Most of them have to do with regulation, which is something that we'll probably touch on a bit later. But yeah, at launch, people will need to already have crypto funds in order to bring them into the index funds. That's just a fact of life. So that's a limitation that's a limitation we got to live. We got to live with. The way that we're making it easier for people there is, as I said before, that you only need one to get in. As long as you got a USDT, you can get in. You don't need to, for example, if there's 8 tokens in a pool, you don't need to like hold a stake in each of them already in order to be able to come into it. So we do a whole bunch of exchanges behind the scenes to allow that to happen. The next step after that, of course, as you say, is to just let people enter a credit card number or transfer funds from an account and basically get into it that way. That's something that's absolutely in the works. There's just a few more hurdles to jump through.
Right, but it's great that it's in your roadmap and that you have that in there, right? So the part of crypto right now is that to get into a lot of these really unique opportunities, you do have to be in the space, as in you have to be able to have some crypto to do some of these things, but it doesn't mean that you can't map out and have ways for more and more people to be able to come on even easier. So awesome that y'all have that mapped out and that you are doing that. And you brought up another big thing that's always on top of people's minds, regulation. How has setting up an index fund been with all the regulators out there?
Yeah, tough is the answer. So we're still working through. We're still working through it. We're confident we've got a solution, obviously, but regulation is really the buzzword of. I think it's going to be the buzzword of 2022 for crypto. Especially over the last 2 years, probably no longer than 2 years. Crypto is no longer a game, if you know what I mean. Now, obviously, 2 years ago, it was already possible to make huge amounts of money in crypto. So I'm not suggesting that it was a game at that point, but it's being treated as a much more serious thing over the last 2 years. A lot of government actors and big players, shall we say, are becoming very interested in regulating it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a challenge. There are benefits and opportunities there. But it's something that not just us, but everybody, I guess, has to think about more and more. How do we deal with KYC requirements? How do we deal with financial regulations? Financial service provider regulations. All of these things. We've got a solution that works at the moment. It's an ever-changing field. This is actually another reason that I think projects like ours are very important, is because if you were to expose the end customer to having to do all this, they would never in a million years, right? Like if I just took a guy, if I took a guy off the street in Los Angeles and I basically said, all right, man, listen, you want to invest 100K into crypto, here's a pamphlet of 300 pages of the rules and regulations you need to be aware of, literally not to go to jail, all right?
Yeah.
Like this is how it is. Read all this, figure it out. Let me know what you want to do. No, right? So we have to do it for them, and we have to do it for them in a way that doesn't obligate them to some kind of complex additional process, which is how it's been for in a number of cases. I remember back in the day when the trade on Binance, all you had to do is create an account like you would on any online shop, and away you go. These days, you have to go obviously through extraordinary KYC measures, in order to trade. So, what we want to do is we want to make sure that people, as much as possible, are away from that they don't have to do anything that is not absolutely required of them, and that the platform, so ExpX or another platform, does it for them. So, right. And towards that end, we leverage the principles of DeFi, we leverage the principles of allowing people to transact through anonymous pools. Index funds are obviously, depending on the tokens inside them, are safeguarded in various ways. It's just about making sure that we're compliant with everything we need to be, and our customers are compliant without even knowing what it is they're compliant with. Because right. I think that this is one of the things, even in traditional finance, is this onerous amount of legislation that's placed on people who just want to do something very, very basic, which is just earn money on their investment, right? That's all there is. There's no more to it than that. So regulation is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity of 2022 for crypto, in my opinion. There you go.
You heard it here first.
Print it.
Reround that, go through it again, because Alex just put some great great knowledge out there, which is really important as we look, again, back to mass adoption of companies handling a lot of that to keep the safety of their end users in check and without them having to be worried about this because it can be detrimental to them even coming on and wanting to use the product in the first place. So the impetus definitely is going to continue to fall on these companies to figure a lot of that out. And the more that you have figured out and are doing things by the book and doing it in a safe way, the more adoption you're going to get because people are going to be like, hey, here's a trusted source. Here's a way that you can come in, et cetera. And like you said, you're playing the long game. You're doing the groundwork that you need to make sure that everybody feels safe and secure about, coming on and using everything you have building. So that's awesome.
I always think like would I myself use this project, like would I actually, could I be, if I wanted to come in and do this, could I be bothered, and if all I have to do is, connect the wallet and make a transaction, then yeah, sure. All right. But if I try to do that and, up comes a 9-page long form that I have to, fill in my dog's maiden name, then, I'm just not going to bother. Right.
Right.
So we got to make sure it works for real people.
Absolutely. And it sounds like y'all are definitely doing that. But Alex, again, man, you've dropped a lot of amazing information for us today. I always like to wrap up our interviews with 2 fun questions. The first one being, with all the information and knowledge you have right now, if you go impart 1 to 2 pieces of wisdom to yourself when you first got it started on this venture, what would you tell yourself?
Buy Bitcoin, a good piece of advice. That's one. So I guess the most important thing I would say is don't assume that anyone else knows what they're doing just because you haven't got it completely figured out yet. When I first started, I kind of had this impression. I looked at a whole bunch of projects out there, and I thought they had it all figured out. I thought they just had it made. I thought they knew everything. And then I realize now that actually, more than half of them were just complete bullshit. There's just a lot of crap out there, unfortunately. The crypto space at the moment is very oversaturated with people who unfortunately do not know what they're doing. And it can be hard to tell the difference. So the piece of advice is take your time, do your due diligence, do your own research as far as you're able. Mm-hmm. And if any red flags come up, just move on.
Yeah. Hey, you heard it here first. Great 2 pieces of advice you give back to yourself. And I think a lot of people can definitely benefit from it. But as a final fun question, I always like to wrap up with, what is a final thought that you want to leave with everyone listening today?
I guess the final thought is, it is my fondest wish that everybody take the time to just continue to educate themselves on what crypto and the idea of crypto really is. I think that even among people that are already playing in the space, that already hold even quite significant assets in crypto, there's really no understanding of what it is. There's an understanding of, well, it's a coin, it's worth something. Here's an NFT, it's worth something. But just like in the real world, it's not enough to know that, here's a dollar bill, 2 of them buys a Coke, or, here's a gold ring, it's worth a lot of money. That's not enough for you to really understand how to work with the concept. In order to have any hope of being successful with investment or with just using your money, intelligently, you need to know a little bit about what underpins the system. Where does the money come from? Where does it go? How is exchange controlled? Who controls it? Because without that underpinning, you've got random bits of knowledge and they're free floating and there's no connection between them. I'm not saying everybody needs to go out there and do a degree in economics or finance, but just even the odd YouTube video from somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about can really help just piece it together in your head. At the moment, crypto is still pretty disjointed and random. There are very, very serious projects out there with very serious financial backing, occupying pretty much the same amount of mind space, I think, in the collective consciousness as projects that are just doing something completely, putting out multicolored baboons. It's there's no connection between the two, and yet they're there. So just continue to support, continue to educate yourselves. Continue to support the projects that you believe in the crypto space. Let's all move forward together, because at the end of the day, crypto is a good thing for all of us.
Absolutely. Alex, great Great final thought. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and for sharing all the amazing insights that you had today. What are ways that people can connect with you and learn more about ExpX?
Check out our website, expx.finance. There's a link to our Telegram channel there as well. You can get in touch with us via email and whatever the hell else. So we are already live on BSC mainnet. So there's a link at the top right of the website that you can click and check out our UI, even though it's going to be updated soon. We're launching in Q1 this year. So over the next 2-3 months, keep an eye out for announcements and all that on our website as usual. Yeah, just keep an eye on us over the next few months and come along and join the ride.
Awesome. Sounds great. Everyone make sure to go check that out. I really appreciate you sharing all the information again, Alex. And for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent.